Good, ready to go?
Patrick Cohen, I'm going to call on you to do the pledge.
Go ahead, Chuck.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this regularly scheduled meeting of the Wethersfield Board of Education. Tonight is Tuesday, April 27th, 2021, and this meeting is being held virtually in accordance with the Governor's executive order. Ellen, can we have roll call, please?
Yes, Chairperson Carey. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Cassio? Mrs. Evans? Here. Mrs. Granato?
Present.
Mr. Lesser?
Here.
Mr. Michaels?
Here.
Mrs. Paradise?
Oh, you're here, Elaine.
Yes, I did see her on the list.
But I'm muted. Hello, I'm back.
There
again.
you are.
I forgot that pizza time.
Mr. Riley?
Here.
Vice Chairperson, Mr. Healy?
Here.
Chairperson, Mr. Carey?
Present.
And Wethersfield High School Student Representative, Tiago Wen. All present.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Cohen, if you could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd appreciate it.
Certainly. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Moving on to approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the regularly scheduled board meeting from March 23rd?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Seeing none with a motion on the table, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to public comment. Mr. Hammond, I'm going to read one letter and then I'll let you go to the phones.
Certainly.
I have 4 letters.
Thank you.
All right. So this letter is from David Welshow, and he writes, give me 1 second. Dear members of the Board of Education, as a father of the recent valedictorian 2019 and a father of the current senior at Wethersfield High School, we are asking you to stand with us and be the strongest of advocates to improve on what is currently being planned for our students' senior prom. To think that this truncated senior prom is a parking lot or an amusement park is adequate after such a disappointing year is not to fully grasp the possibilities with a little more imagination and determination on the part of the school administration that you lead. There are so much better options. Our children of Wethersfield so deserve a push from you and your team. Over 60 plus families, email chain and outreach effort have proactively secured an outstanding option. There are currently 2 spaces available at the Farmington Club on Friday, May 28th. The 2 spaces available include one indoor that holds 320 and another outdoor tent that holds 310. The following is a collection of reasons why the senior families feel the Farmington Club on 528 is the right venue for our kids versus a parking lot or amusement park. The senior families have a great deal of confidence you'll get an overwhelmingly positive response from the student body for the Farmington Club option, and it's 100% doable with a little imagination and determination by the Wethersfield School Administration, including the venue will help create a wonderful, bright, and lasting memory of their time at Wethersfield High School. It is available on 528 if the decision is reached quickly. Farmington Club meets the Finish Strong guidance. Chaperones options are available among existing staff, particularly if the staff from across Wethersfield school systems are allowed to step up, which they will. Outstanding opportunity for stellar senior prom experience versus a parking lot or an amusement park. Dance floor, common eating area, site management space. The venue will keep the students in one location versus an amusement park, which will enhance the experience and help chaperones, management, and safety. Professional staff at the venue that cater and support the parties of this type for a living, parking lot, amusement park, not so much. This will help to increase health and safety of students. Please immediately do everything you can do to help salvage this year and help our seniors and help give our seniors a fond and lasting memory of their hard-earned time at Wethersfield High School. Please ask the Wethersfield administration to add Farmington Club 528 in a new survey to our seniors to identify their preference. Parking lot, amusement park, Farmington Club. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Best, Adam Welshow, PhD. P.S. As a side note, Rocky Hill will be having their prom at the Farmington Club. Their administration feels it's the best option for their seniors, even in this time of COVID. It may be worth a call to speak to them about their reasons for choosing the Farmington Club. Michael, you may go to the phones now.
Okay. I'm going to admit first, first one that's,
Michael, you're on mute.
got it. Thank you, sorry about that. Zach O is not public comment, that's actually Mrs. O'Connor. So this is not public comment. Next one's coming in. Hang on just a second. Mrs. O'Connor is presenting tonight. She just came in as Zach O. All right. Gonna admitting now, Kate McCumber.
She's part of the CITES presentation, Mike.
All right, so Kate McCumber is also staff. So we have no further public comment, Mr. Carey, on the phones.
All right, I'll continue to read. We have 3 more emails. Bear with me. The next email comes from Caroline Butler, 196 Fox Hill Road. Mr. Emmett, I would like you to consider sending a survey to the kids for the Farmington Club as their prom location. The prom needs to be at least 14 days before graduation. If they go into quarantine, many kids will miss graduation. My son and many of his friends will have their vaccine, but many won't. I was very disappointed on Friday when I saw the juniors would have a prom at a venue and not the seniors. I saw your most recent email Friday evening. These seniors have missed out on so many events and many have been in a slump. A Monday night at Quasi on 6/7 is not a good choice for WHS. Should have secured a date for a venue a long time ago. Other towns that are in our CCHD reserve venues, such as the Farmington Club in the Cascade, please reconsider letting kids go to a Farmington Club in May. They have an outdoor tent that fits 310 people, and it would be more like a formal prom. These kids have never had a prom. I think they should have a prom between May 19th and May 28th, so quarantine will not be an issue for graduation. Thank you for taking my request into consideration. Caroline Butler. This email is from Christine Kelly Lasella, 37 Belmont Street. I'm sending this email to the BOA, and I ask the powers that be to consider the option of a senior prom at the Farmington Club or a venue comparable. As the mother of a senior and a junior this year, I feel Quasi Amusement Park doesn't bode well. You'll have the ladies in gowns and dresses with an option to change, or someone doesn't change and their dress gets snagged while stuck in a ride. That's an accident waiting to happen. The drive to Quasi is too far to even consider having the kids drive, and I feel if they have a problem, why not give it to them? Who cares if it's a Memorial Day weekend? It's COVID craze, and these kids have had enough taken from them, and honestly, they have handled it well. Please give them the prom they deserve. I, as a parent, would certainly volunteer to chaperone or do whatever is needed, though not sure my son would want me instead of staff. If the kids are allowed to be off campus of Wethersfield, it would be special. Changing out of gowns and tuxes doesn't seem that special at all. Thank you for your time. Please give the class of 2021 their prom. Christine Kelly Laselle, 37 Belmont Street. This email is from Lisa and Rick Puglili, 15 Quail Hill Road. Hello, Board of Education members. Tonight you are going to hear from parents and students about the upcoming WHS senior prom. We would like to echo their comments and support their effort to let other seniors choose where they want their proms this year. As a parent of seniors, we know they feel grateful that they can have a prom at all. We all have been living under strict guidelines and rules for a year, and they are no exception. They are lifting some of these restrictions is the first bright spot in a dark year for them. The seniors are only asking to be allowed to vote on where to have their prom. The option they would be choosing from would all be approved by the Central Connecticut Health District and all meet Finish Strong guidelines. The current plan is to hold the prom in a parking lot was an option when nothing else was available to them. Now that things have changed, they would like to have a say in where they can attend prom. As parents, we feel bad that they have never been able to have a prom in their high school experience, but they only feel excited for what is possible and ahead for them. Our wonderful town, supportive of all, our town is wonderful, supportive of all our students, and in turn, our students make our town proud with their many accomplishments. These kids will be graduates in matters of weeks. We feel that this is an easy gift to them to simply let them choose their prom location. Thank you for considering this request. We are so appreciative of Board of Education and our school administration for all the work they have done to make our kids successful. All right, anyone come on the phone while I was reading my letters?
No, sir.
All right, public comment is now closed. Moving on to communication, Mr. Emmett.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. Good evening, everyone. I have a variety of updates to provide. First and foremost, want to talk about senior activities and where we are. As you know, this past year has been a difficult one, to say the least. And we hear loud and clear about what we believe our students deserve, and we remain committed to trying to get them as much as we possibly can. We also have to face the reality that we are still operating under guidelines, and although the guidelines have changed with regard to venues, we still have guidelines that we have to follow as a school district. So we must strike the balance. Originally, the senior prom was to be held at the AquaTurf on June 5th. This presented a challenge. Approximately a month and a half ago, we met with the senior class officers, specifically Tiago, and we talked about alternatives. He spoke with the class, and he talked about the idea of an alternative at Wethersfield High School. As we received an update from the state with regard to changes to guidelines at venues, the process over at Wethersfield High School was not one that was seen positively. We had actually offered up the quasi option a couple of months ago, and the seniors did not like that. We offered it up again this past weekend as an alternative to be out of Wethersfield High School. And again, it is not the optimal. So Ms. Kavanaugh, the senior class advisor, has been working over the course of the weekend to look for alternative sites. I do want to caution everyone that the reality when we compare ourselves to other districts, we have to take some things into account. We have to take into account our numbers. We have to take into account that different districts are approaching proms differently. Some are offering dancing, others are not. Some are offering a wide variety of food, others are not. We're trying to do what we can to make sure that our 277 graduates get the best opportunity possible. The other thing I want to make sure everybody knows, and I had a meeting with one of our parents and students this afternoon, and I mentioned the fact that I don't want to have to worry about students quarantining for graduation. I want to make sure that ultimately graduation is the best option so that everybody can get out to the Cove and have the opportunity to receive their diploma. In addition to that, we have other senior activities that are going to be going on, including the senior picnic. This year it won't be at High Meadow. Why? Because High Meadow couldn't guarantee we'd be the only school there. So the seniors will have an excursion out to another site. Up to this point, I've heard nothing but positive about that. With regard to awards, we'll have a combination of drive-through, such as Dollars for Scholars coming up on the 26th of May. We'll also have academic and sports awards as well. And again, we want to make sure that we strike the balance, because the reality, as I continue to send home communications on an almost daily basis, is that we continue to see cases, and we want to make sure our kids are safe and healthy right up through the end of the year. So we've got a meeting tomorrow with class officers coming up at 12:30. We will have an update with regard to where we'll be headed with prom, but we are certainly exploring other options. I do want to make mention also when we're talking about prom venues, there is also the factor of cost. And I have to be acutely aware of the fact that the cost of the prom, I have to make it where it is equitable and all have the opportunity to attend. So that is one of the factors we look at. In terms of availability, we also have to look at what the extras are. So when I hear about the Farmington Club, we reached out to the Farmington Club and we heard that the dance floor was not included. So it's an additional cost. So we have to be careful with these venues. They aren't always what they're cracked up to be. And I do want to say this to all of our parents of our seniors. We know what you've gone through this year. We know what your seniors have gone through. And I remain committed to making sure that they get the best possible opportunity. But I also have to remain committed to the health and safety of our students as well as our chaperones. So we'll have additional information forthcoming on this tomorrow, and we'll get the prom squared away, and your kids will get a good, solid opportunity. So you have my promise on that. With regard to graduation, we are on board for Friday, June 11th. At this point in time, we are looking at doing it at Cove Park. That is our traditional location. We've had a conversation with the Wethersfield Police Department with regard to the resurrection of the motorcade. There will be some changes to the graduation ceremony. Typically in the past, we've provided seating for parents and family members. This year, with social distancing guidelines, we will not be doing that, so parents will need to provide their own either blankets or chairs. We will be socially distancing our students in chairs that we're providing, and we are going to be as traditional as we possibly can, but there will be some changes. We may not be utilizing the entire band just because of the amount of space that they'll take up under the current restrictions. So we will do the best we can to make sure that the graduation is as traditional as possible. I will tell you at this point in time, the rain location for graduation would be Wethersfield High School, and I'm also going to give you the reality that we're going to have to break that up if it goes inside. We're also going to have to limit or eliminate altogether parents participating. We may have to live stream. And again, as is always the case, we'll do everything we can to make sure that this is outside. It's not the optimal, but it's the best that we can do under the current conditions. So with regard to the rain location, or the rain date, if you will, and it wouldn't be a date, we've looked at that as well. Pushing it off has a domino effect on senior activities. It has a domino effect on our friends at SafeGrad. We cannot utilize a Saturday at Cove Park because of the fact that we've got the DMV open for business. So we're really going to have to focus on alternate location, which would be Wethersfield High School. With regard to Project SafeGrad, I am currently working with the SafeGrad committee to provide them space at Wethersfield High School to offer up activities. This is a step up from the community center. We feel it's a better space that will allow our students to spread out, and it has a much better ventilation system. So we'll continue to be working with SafeGrad to make sure that we support that experience for our kids as well. Some other items just in general for the district. I would like to give a shout out to our friends at Unico for their generosity and recognition of our Wethersfield Public School staff members, as well as the staff at Corpus Christi. Unico member Tom Vaughn facilitated the delivery of almost 700 pre-packaged cookies and brownies from Grange Fresh on Main Street in Wethersfield. So to our friends at Unico, thank you very much for your generosity. Greatly appreciated. I'd also like to offer thanks to Ocean State Job Lot on the Silas Deane Highway for their generous donation of hand sanitizer. We received an entire pallet of hand sanitizer. Our interim security director, Mike Barabalt, broke that down and delivered that out to schools. So again, to our friends at Ocean State Job Lot, we say thank you very much. Much appreciated. As a follow-up to recent communications, I'd like to remind the community that we will return to our regular school calendar for the month of May. Tomorrow's early release day will be the last under our modified calendar. Do remember that the May calendar does include an early release day on Wednesday, May 5th. That is a previously scheduled date for professional development. The remaining Wednesdays in May and June will be full school days. Just want to give you an update with regard to Phase 3. Members of the Facilities and Maintenance Committee will receive an update with regard to cash flow and timing coming out of Collier's this week. In addition to that, we've had conversation with Malone and McBroom, and with regard to the update on the enrollment study, we'll be looking at doing that in the fall. given the fact that we've had an increase this year in the number of homeschool, and Malone and McBroom believes that the pandemic will have an impact on enrollment. So we'll be looking to get that update early in the fall and have it completed by October 1st. With regard to the Highcrest principal, we are proceeding with the next round of interviews this week. Again, thank you to our parents, our staff members, and our board member who have been instrumental in the process thus far. We've been very impressed with our pool of candidates and are looking forward to selecting the next principal of Highcrest Elementary School. It's expected to start on July 1st in place of our colleague Siobhan O'Connor, who will transition and actually is already starting to transition to Wethersfield High School as we speak. The Social Justice Coalition met on April 20th. That just so happened to be the day that the verdict came in on the Chauvin trial. So the Social Justice Coalition addressed that particular issue, and then we continued our work on developing planning for long-term growth and benefit here in Wethersfield. So we have a steering committee meeting coming up again tomorrow. Our next Social Justice Coalition meeting will take place on May 27th. So that work is not stopping. That work continues. And I'd also like to provide you an update on the CREC Teacher Residency Program. Last week, I had the opportunity to participate with teacher leaders from CREC, as well as administrators from CREC, on the interview process for teacher candidates for the Teacher Residency Program. This is a program that the district will take part in coming up next year to increase the number of staff members of color that we have in the district. So we're very excited, and I will tell you that the interview process was very rigorous, and there are definitely some great candidates that will benefit the Wethersfield Public Schools. And with that, that is communications this evening. Thank you, Mr. Carey. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Emmett. There are no action items tonight. We're moving on to reports and discussions. The city's presentation, Mr. Emmett.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. I am very pleased to have a team of individuals with us this evening that are going to talk about Wethersfield's participation in the CITES group. Wethersfield is only one of 7 districts in the entire country that is participating in this CITES program, and at this point in time, I'd like to turn it over to Sarah Harris for the presentation. Thank you, Sarah.
All right. There we go. All right, thank you, Mr. Emmett. So as you shared, last March, I spoke to the Board of Education and shared that Wethersfield had been selected as one of just 7 districts across the United States to participate in a 3-year project focused on building inclusive technology ecosystems to increase accessibility in our schools. Now, a year later, and it's been quite a year, we're excited to share an annual update on our team's progress and next steps. The power of this project really lies in the collaborative teams that have developed as a result of this work, both our internal teams within the Wethersfield Public Schools and our external partnerships with colleagues and accessible technology experts across the nation. With that in mind, 6 members of our CITES team have joined us today, representing an array of different district and community voices. I'd like to introduce those who will be joining us today. I'm Sarah Harris, Instructional Supervisor of Technology, and I'm joined by Liz Freitas, Instructional Supervisor of Special Education, Becky Granatini, one of our elementary curriculum specialists, Barb Cordone, an occupational therapist, Leslie Poulis, our Silas Dean Middle School Library Media Specialist, and Kate McCumber, who's our parent representative on the CITES team. Please keep in mind that this is just a small representation of our significantly larger CITES team in the Wethersfield schools. Today, we'll share a glimpse into our team's vision and goals as we move ahead and shift our focus from assistive to accessible technology in our classrooms.
So it strikes me as amazing how small our work first started. Sarah and I initially met in the small little conference room across the hall in efforts to improve our inclusive practices for all students. It's between this small collaboration that our work began to grow. We realized that in order to make our programming more accessible and more equitable to all of our students, that we would need to begin a larger collaboration, and thus the work began. We started working with not only our assistive technology team, but also teacher leaders, parents, service providers, and other administrators to begin to evaluate our work so that we could move from a less reactive position to a more proactive position, providing our students with the assistive technology that they would need to access all of their curriculum.
So when we talk about accessibility in action, it means that all of us arrived at this meeting, that's the universal access, but we may have arrived in different ways. We may have used speech to text to add the calendar event on our phone or watch or our watch. Perhaps we had a reminder feature a few minutes before to make sure we arrived on time, but in the end, we all had access through Zoom to attend, even though we may be physically in different places.
Our work can be illustrated through Todd Rose's example in his book, The End of Average. In the late 1950s, pilots were being injured and dying in flight. Initially, there were two solutions. Planes could be designed for the average pilot, but not one pilot fit. Planes could be designed for each pilot, but that would be too costly and expensive. In the end, the planes needed to become adjustable. Apply this thought to our curriculum. Building a curriculum that can accommodate all learners. Shelley Moore describes this, but takes it a step further. Empower our learners to accommodate for themselves. Empower student agency.
What if we stopped looking at the average and instead started to look at the range of our learners? What are their dimensions? But not in terms of what's missing, but instead, what do they bring? What are their stories? What are their histories? Or as my good friend Leighton calls it, their funds of knowledge. How do we find out and use what our students bring in all of their dimensions and design a curriculum that's adjustable just for them? This type of curriculum would allow all students to be successful, every single one. But here's the kicker. In this part really got me. I was thinking about this one day and I was imagining the pilot like crawling into an adjustable plane. And I asked myself, who's making these adjustments? And then it hit me, the pilot. The pilot is making the adjustments. And then I started thinking about my own students and I realized, wait a second, who's making the adjustments for them? It wasn't them, it was me. I was making the adjustments, the teacher. You know, we talk all the time about growth mindset and student agency, self-regulation of learning, and I realized that this is it. This is what we're talking about. How do we teach students to make the adjustments that they need so that they can fly the plane? We have been so focused on trying to get kids to fit into the plane that we've totally forgotten that fitting into the plane isn't even the goal. The goal is to fly it, to fly the plane. It's our job to teach them how to make the adjustments that they need. Once they figure that out, they can take that plane wherever they want. What if we stopped looking at... What if we stopped looking...
Sorry about that. There we go.
So the essence of our work, illustrated through this video, is the concept of universal design for learning, or UDL. Thinking this way, we expect people to think and learn in different ways because variability is the norm. The barrier is in the environment, not the learner, and we can use UDL as a way of thinking about teaching and learning that helps give all students an equal opportunity to succeed. This approach offers flexibility in the way students access material, engage with it, and show what they know. Developing lesson plans this way helps all students.
So last year we completed training with the State Education Resource Center that focused on universal design for learning and assistive technology. Our goals were to develop a formalized implementation process within the district and to establish an assistive technology team to improve and streamline implementation. Following our CERC training, we learned about an opportunity to broaden the scale of our work and submitted an application to CITES, the Center on Inclusive Technology and Education Systems, to participate in a national project focused on developing accessible technology ecosystems in schools. And as mentioned earlier, We were selected as just one of 7 districts in the nation and the only district in the Northeast. This led to a shift in our focus from assistive to accessible. So the goal of this project is to inform development of the CITES framework, which is a tool that will be used nationally to provide guidance on how UDL, assistive technology, and accessibility can lead to a balanced, inclusive technology system that brings together education technology, information technology, and assistive technology for students.
As we've worked in the CITES partnership, we've kept our district vision in mind as we attain valuable new insights into our inclusive infrastructure. Key to this supportive partnership has been the inclusion of key stakeholders, among them parents within our Wethersfield community. When, for example, Kate McComber, who's with us here tonight, offered some supportive guidance in terms of our language, how to help to hone our language in our vision and within our partnership to make it approachable to all. The Center for Inclusive Technology and Education Systems has worked through a design thinking process, which is part of what we've used to help to define our own vision within Wethersfield, and as our partnership has evolved. And within that, we've been looking at creating those community-wide vision and aligned goals. We've also worked on developing that strategic technology implementation plan and measuring our progress, which is all part of the upcoming steps of our partnership with CITES.
And Kate?
Hey everyone, I've been really glad to be a part of the team and to be able to share a parent perspective on this project. I think my first meeting earlier this year was when I saw the first draft of the vision that has come for this program, and I had a lot of questions and discussion with the team, and I really commend them for listening and for taking into consideration really sort of an outside perspective, a parent perspective, not an educator perspective necessarily. And I think, I've really seen that come together for the team throughout this process. The willingness to deeply collaborate with colleagues, with parents, with community members has been really wonderful to see. So I'm excited for the work ahead. And I agree, Mr. Emmett, I think this is really important for the district, and the fact that this is one of 7 selected across the country, and to be helping set national standards is big for the Wethersfield Public Schools. So thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to the continued work.
And Kate, we're so grateful to have you. When we talk about accessibility, we're often talking about accessibility for students, but I think you have been instrumental in helping us to remember that accessibility goes beyond our students, and that we want to make sure that any, for example, the vision that we create is accessible to our families and to our parents as well. And so helping to give us, like you said, that voice outside the educator sphere really helped to make the instructional technology revised vision what it is today, because it was different when you first came on board, and we're grateful for that support and that feedback.
Yep, thank you. Happy to be lending my 2 cents.
So one example of an accessibility tool that is being used district-wide is called Google Read and Write, which is a literacy support tool that offers help with everyday tasks like reading text out loud, understanding unfamiliar words, researching assignments, and proofing written work. At the elementary level, students are using the speech-to-text and word prediction options when writing, and the text-to-speech option that reads text aloud to them can be used for editing and to listen to articles that can be read aloud from websites. It also has other features, including a picture dictionary.
And at the middle school level, students mostly use Read and Write to listen to longer, more complex texts when doing classroom readings or research, or to dictate their ideas for writing, just like we might use voice text on a phone. Some may also use highlighting tools to select important details or annotate articles, And some teachers have made it a point to let parents know as well if they think it may be helpful to their students.
And if you aren't familiar with Google Read and Write, if you look along the top of this slide, you'll see a rectangle with many, many symbols. And that is a screenshot of what the toolbar that Google Read and Write encompasses looks like. Google Read and Write is a built-in tool that works with any website students are visiting in Google Chrome. So it is a particularly versatile accessibility tool, and it allows students to do many things with sort of a one-stop shop. When we consider accessibility tools, we always look at the tools from a number of different perspectives, as you can imagine. And our CITES team is particularly focused on better understanding both the what and the how of assistive technology in our district. So what are our students and our teachers using in classrooms, and then how are they using those tools? As a team, we've started digging into analytics on some of our tools, and we've used Google Read and Write as a particular case study. We know that it's a tool that's being used in varied ways in kindergarten through 12th grade. Since September, we have had more than 84,000 clicks on the Google Read and Write toolbar across our district. This is incredible. Definitely something to celebrate, and it also provides us with many more questions to explore as a CITES team. As we move forward as a team, we're interested in exploring how we can determine the efficacy and the impact of this tool. We know it's being used. We want to learn more about how it's being used and what specific impact it's having on our students in classrooms. So when we consider accessibility tools, we always look at the tools. There we go. Okay, now we're loading, taking a second there. So of course, budgetary implications are also an important element of our analysis when it comes to any tool. Read and Write provides us with access to a wide range of accessibility tools for every staff member and every student for just $6,480 per year. This makes Read and Write one of our higher impact, lower cost tools. We're looking forward to expanding applications of this tool, K-12, and further exploring its potential and working with our partners at CITES to develop ways to more effectively measure its efficacy in classrooms.
So the wonderful news is that our exciting work is going to be continuing, both as led within our CITES framework project and our WPS CITES team. At the CITES level, within those 7 districts that we've been talking about, the national program, we continue to develop the leadership phase of our framework. And we're soon going to be moving on to our next phase, which is instruction. Within this phase, we'll be taking a proactive approach to broaden educators' technology skills. With this, we will support them as they offer explicit instruction and support students while focusing on removing barriers to learning. We also will be working, of course, within our Wethersfield Public Schools CITES team, which is sort of an offshoot of that larger team, where we'll be continuing to work on communicating the availability of accessibility of tools and support, such as the Google Read and Write that Sarah was mentioning. We will be continuing to work to develop a system for collecting and analyzing data to evaluate the impact of these tools for student learning. We will continue to support the development of our national framework for the implementation of inclusive and accessible instructive technology. So lots of exciting next steps for us within this project.
So we are incredibly proud of the work that has been done so far, but I'd say even more excited for the work that we know is to come. We are honored as a district to be a part of this national project, and we're confident that the work that this team, along with our colleagues across the nation, does will have an impact not just on Wethersfield classrooms and students in Wethersfield, but also on students across the country. And we would be remiss if we didn't thank our entire CITES team, because our CITES team is growing by the day and includes representatives from across the district. And then also our CITES team is an offshoot of our assistive technology team that began last year. And really both of these teams have been instrumental in this work and in planting the seeds for this project to emerge and to really take root here in Wethersfield. So thank you to both those teams and to Mr. Emmett and the Board of Education for inviting us to share our update today.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Ms. Harris and the team for coming. Any board members with questions or comments? Yes, Elaine. You're muted.
Oh, I got through that. Technology, please, Sarah. 2 questions. This Google Read and Write, we've been chosen out of one of 7 to use it in our district, correct? Am I hearing that correctly?
No, so we've been chosen to participate in this larger, broader project with a focus on accessibility in general across classrooms. We've chosen as a district to use Google Read and Write as a case study, if you will, to do some of the work we're doing with the CITES project.
Okay. Is this still going on right now, Sarah? Is this being used right now in our district?
Yes, so those numbers that I shared, the 84,000 clicks on that toolbar, I took that about noon today. So that has been from September 1st until today. We had 84,000 clicks. Yep.
It sounds very positive, but as a person who's not too tech, can you show us this in action at another board meeting?
Sure, we could absolutely share it at another time.
That would just give me a better image if Mike could arrange that.
Sure.
Just a short 1 minute, I just want to see how it works for the classroom.
Sure, and we can also provide a brief, I have some brief videos that would give you an idea of what it looks like, capabilities. Yeah. I'll send that to Mr. Emmett. No problem.
Yeah, Sarah, might I suggest that we do that, because I know even this week I had a question about Jamboard, and you provided me a very nice 2-minute tutorial. So I'd be happy to provide that in the Friday update for everybody.
I'll put it together. I'll send it along.
Thank you.
Ms. Granato.
Sarah, I have a question for you and the whole team. So are you communicating with these other districts that are all over the country, but you're giving them the statistics that you've received on your Google Read and Write? Are they giving you the same on other platforms?
Yes, we meet with the other teams about once a month. So we met last Thursday, and not every district is focusing on Google Read and Write. Every district has different projects, if you will, within the larger project, different areas of focus. But we ask each other questions. So my question last week was, we're looking at how to evaluate efficacy of assistive technology. What are you doing in South Dakota? And what are you doing in California? And they asked us some questions about universal design for learning. So there's a lot of those collaborative conversations and sharing.
Great. I'm glad to hear that. That's what I was actually looking for.
I think that's the most exciting part of the project, is that sharing.
Sarah, I have to agree. When we talk about collaboration, we first began this project collaborating across departments, and now we're collaborating across the country. So we are really soaking in what California is doing as they're hit with the pandemic and they look toward inclusive practices, and 7 of the other districts that are involved in, and we get to learn from them to improve practice here in Wethersfield.
Thank you. Ms. Evans.
Hi, Sarah and group. Thank you so much for the presentation. This is super exciting. It's nice to see our name up there with other districts across the country. So in addition to the Google platform as a vehicle for accessibility, will the district be trying out other things? Are we focused on this particular thing? Are there other initiatives that you are going to kind of apply? And how long does this collaboration project continue for?
Absolutely. So this is a 3-year project, and I think that part of the 3-year commitment, if you will, was that this work takes time, right? And I think they recognize that this work takes time. And so, yes, absolutely, Google Read and Write has been our area of focus as we were asked to select a specific tool to look at as part of the leadership phase. But we're now moving into the instructional phase of the project. And so we will be looking at a number of different tools. We are interested in looking at the touchscreen Chromebooks that will be in our 2nd grade classrooms next year as a universal accessibility tool, and thinking about how that could potentially have broader applications on a larger scale beyond 2nd grade. Those are just 2 small examples of this work, but again, it is a 3-year project, so it is ever evolving and ongoing.
It's super cool and exceptionally relevant for today. So thank you so much for your hard work, and I can't wait to keep hearing more things you guys are testing out.
Thank you.
Any other board members? All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for all your hard work. It's great to see Wethersfield on the map. And thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you, team.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, next presentation, ESSER presentation. Mr. Emmett.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. We'll bring that up now. We have a multidisciplinary team that will be presenting the ESSER Grant Fund presentation this evening. And again, just want to say good evening to everyone in the community. Want to talk with you about the ESSER grant and what the ESSER grant entails. ESSER stands for Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. And we are fortunate, along with all other districts in the state of Connecticut, to be receiving these federal funds to support our Board of Education and our students and our staff during this COVID pandemic. Under the ESSER Fund, it was established as part of the Education Stabilization Fund and the CARES Act. This is actually called ESSER 2. We've received one round of funding already. And again, this is really designed to address the impact that the coronavirus has had on our district as well as districts across the country. So, next slide, please. Thank you, Sally. With regard to our priorities, we're lining them out pretty simplistically. We're not looking to come up with a lot of new initiatives. We know full well that we have a strategic plan that is in place. We're actually approximately halfway through it at this point in time. That was a plan that was written for 2018 through 2024. So our priorities are as such: to build a positive, empathetic, and safe community and increase effective communication. And that is related to Goal 1, Action 4 of our strategic plan, as well as Goal 1, Action 2. Priority number 2 in the district is to increase student achievement through implementation of innovative, inclusive instruction and evidence-based practices, including Tier 1 practices and instruction. That aligns directly with our strategic plan for Goal 1, Action 4, Goal 1, Action 2, and Goal 1, Action 3. And finally, priority number 3, to deliberately identify inequities in our policies and practices that impact our community and change structures to ensure equitable outcomes for all, inclusive of race. And this is in alignment with strategic plan goal number 1, Action 5, and goal 2, Action 4. And realistically and as simplistically as possible, we look at it as achievement, empathy, and equity. Those 3 components. Next slide.
So the grant has 4 areas of focus, which are statewide priorities in support of the ESSER funds. I don't think any of these 4 priorities would be a surprise to you. The first one is academic supports, learning loss, learning acceleration, and recovery. This includes measuring and planning related to interrupted learning due to the pandemic, with a strong emphasis on academic supports that must be used to help target students from disproportionately affected by the pandemic. Second priority is family and community connections. We know that direct engagement with families in the community will provide additional supports for our students, both as we continue to adapt to the changing dynamics of the pandemic and ongoing. The third priority is school safety and social emotional well-being of the whole student and of our school staff. So as we all know, and we've talked about for over the last year, that there's an enormous amount of stress, both on our students and our staff. This grant can be focused on both social emotional supports along with continued emphasis on public safety measures. And the fourth priority is remote learning, staff development, and digital divide. And again, this continues to address and focus on reducing the digital divide with technology between those students students, staff, districts, so that all students have equal access and staff have access to the technology related to high engaging student lessons, highly related to the presentation we just saw. So those are the 4 priorities for the grant statewide that we have to connect our work to. John?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board. First of all, I just want to thank Sarah and Liz and the rest of the team, and really for all the work. And just to make the connection, I know, Ms. Evans, you were asking, what other work? That really fits into our priority number 2. And I'll turn it to special ed to develop high-quality, inclusive environments. And so all that fits so well in there, and really some great work. I'm going to start off probably with one of the easiest questions to answer, why mental health supports? Just with that, even before the pandemic started, we were looking to really tighten up and provide more in terms of our social-emotional learning and our social-emotional supports. But really everything since last year, March 2020, from our schools, from the district, from the state, and from the nation has really set the priorities around safety and these social-emotional supports. I guess I just want to maybe frame this that mental professionals, really mental health professionals, have been focused on the ACE study. ACE is an acronym for Adverse Childhood Experiences, and how really, trauma, child abuse trauma, and other adverse situations have really detrimental health effects well into adulthood. And they've estimated that the financial impact of ACEs is more than $1.33 trillion a year. This acronym now has really started to be relabeled to fit today's date, and with the ACE standing for Adverse COVID Experiences. Just with the loss of, the deaths, illnesses, economic and housing hardships, social isolation, and the loss of daily school routine that has impacted our students. And so the Center for Disease Control and Prevention has found that psychiatric admission in 2020 has increased by 24% for young children and 31% for adolescents. And this has actually even been worse for 2021, as we're really facing a national crisis with our children really being boarding up in emergency room for weeks on end because there are no beds available either in our hospitals or residential settings. And I guess I want to share a little bit of a story of a home visit I did the other night. A family of 4, cat and dog, currently displaced to a one-room hotel with sheets set up in between, and I'm going to call them living set arrangements to provide some privacy. And really a beautiful family, but so seriously impacted by COVID. One of the children was having difficulty waking up and getting to school. I wonder why. And so really I'm looking at how do we make sure that families like this are getting the support that they need. And so we need to be there for our children. You've heard me say this, and I'll say it again, every child and every day at all levels. We have to make sure that we provide the foundations and tier 1 support for providing our teachers with the tools, for providing with the curriculum to offer their students, for providing them with the social emotional support, providing them with the coaching to make sure that they're equipped every day. And as the flight attendants inform us, in case of emergency, oxygen masks will drop down. Make sure to put on our own masks before helping others. So we need to be there for our staff. And then the students that are going through more intense social emotional concerns, anxiety, depression, behavioral issues, cutting, sexual promiscuity, risky behaviors, and drugs and alcohol, to name a few. But we have to make sure that we also provide the more intensive tier 2 and tier 3 supports that they need. And so with all that in mind, let me introduce you to Stephanie McKenna and Becky Granatini, who's going to talk a little more about tier 1.
So we're going to, Becky and Stephanie are on the call. We're going to move into, are you there, Becky?
I'm here. Sure.
Yep. We're going to transition to you and Stephanie, talk a little bit about social emotional learning and tier 1 curriculum and why we need an explicit social emotional curriculum.
Perfect. So The reasons that we're focusing on social emotional learning at this point are because we recognize that we do need to have that proactive approach to child development. And also, as educators, we need to know how to respond in the moment to a student in crisis so that we can help to make that situation better and not worse. We recognize that we're part of a team helping to raise students, and teaching these skills at school provides a level of equity. And equity is a key focus of ours. And we recognize that the social emotional focus is very important in creating that level of equity. And the why impacts everyone around us, the children that we teach, our own self and our own wellness, and that we recognize that our own mental health impacts those that are around us. And so why are we focusing on SEL? Again, we also would include the idea that we need to all be on the same playing field. Before students can actually access the content in the curriculum, they need to come to school ready to learn. And when they're in the school environment, they need to feel safe and accepted. So shared experience allowed us to build on the past and to actually start to move forward. So we know that children, all teachers and parents in our community, we certainly recognize that children need to be available for learning and have executive functioning skills that help them to support their actual learning process. This was a necessity pre-pandemic and is even more so now. And of course, without that solid SEL foundation, we know that students have a difficult time actually accessing that academic curriculum. So we have chosen Rethink Education, Rethink Ed, as a program that we'll be implementing next fall. We've begun the process. We'll be starting to roll out some of the teaching for teachers and starting to roll out some of these lessons for teachers within our staff. Some of the most important parts of it include that it aligns very, very closely with our district priorities, which we've talked a lot about. Also, it is a web-based program that can be used across the multitude of settings that we've learned so much about this year, including in-person learning, hybrid, and remote through our Google Classroom. We found as a pilot team, and as a team that was researching this program, we found it to be very easy to navigate, and it has a very specific, that we're working on right now, it has a very specific scope and sequence for priority lessons. And again, that's in development, but we are very excited about the prospect of that coming forward for our students. And within that, there are over 500 easy to use lessons that have great technology. Of course, we won't be using all 500 at once, but we will be prioritizing those lessons based upon the needs of the students that are in front of us, as well as, again, aligning back to those district priorities. And again, most importantly, we're trying to integrate it all, creating that even playing field, and creating those academic connections and the integration across all content areas. So we're really excited about the Rethink Ed and how it's going to support student learning. So stay tuned. It should be exciting work.
And we are going to have some new supports for SEL with Rethink Ed in place. What was kind of neat about this whole process is we had a team of elementary educators, middle school educators, and high school educators exploring different programs, different SEL programs to use, all independently. We didn't have contact with each other, and we all chose the same program. So I think that's kind of great to see that we're all on kind of the same wavelength with this. But there are lots of great supports that Rethink Ed can help us with. There's 3 tiers of intervention. So we have the varied needs of each student, like John was mentioning earlier. And this next one, it was very important to all the groups, parent engagement component and adult SEL component for the staff. We all thought that was something very important that this new program would have. Like Becky mentioned, it's easily integrated with existing technology. It's very user-friendly for students and staff, which makes it very convenient. There's a flexible scope and sequence, and it can complement our already existing curriculum. There's lots of interactive lessons. They promote critical thinking, interaction. And for teachers, there's a student progress monitoring tool, which is very helpful, so we can see where students are and where we can help them get better with. Rethink Ed also provides us with personalized assistance with implementation and scheduling. So we have like a go-to person who helps us directly, which is very helpful. Rethink Ed, it will be incorporated into the classroom through the curriculum revision process. We're starting that this summer. It's very exciting. And I know from the high school level, we're using the vision of the graduate and our new curricula to guide implementation. So we made some huge steps, but we do have some more work to do, and we're all really excited about continuing it. So thank you.
Becky and Stephanie, thank you so much for speaking about Rethink Ed. John, I'm going to turn it back over to you to talk about effective school solutions.
And first of all, I'll thank both Stephanie and Becky too, just because I think Thursdays I was beginning my day with Stephanie at 7:10 and ending the day with Becky at, what time was that? So it was wonderful, and I'm so glad, and I did not architect that, but to come to the same curriculum makes it so much easier and so much effective for the district.
Yeah, and John, I may add, if I could please, just again, this is another example of the leader in action, where we tap into our teacher leaders and make sure that they have a voice in the selection of our curricular materials that impact our kids. So again, both Stephanie and Becky, thank you very much for the work that you did. John, back to you.
Yeah, so actually back to Liz and me, because we're going to talk a little more about Tier 2 and 3 supports.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the ESSER funds, we're looking at ESS, effective school solutions, to help provide our clinicians, our psychologists, counselors, and social workers with the support to assist our schools during this crisis. So effective school solutions, really, they help school districts, and I sort of say reinvent mental health care by partnering with them to create whole school systems to support the mental and behavioral health of our students. Actually, ESS came to me 4 years ago to offer to help build our Tier 3 programs, and I held them off at that time stating, why do I need to pay you to build what we can build ourselves? But right now, we're definitely at a different point. We are in the, crust of a pandemic, during a crisis, and the government has awarded us with the ESSER support for 2 years. And I do not want to hire social workers and psychologists for 2 years, provide them with all the training and coaching, to then really have to lay them off. We learned that lesson, I think it was about 8 or 9 years ago, with some grant funds that came in. And so we've talked to some neighboring towns and observed ESS in action. And I really feel that they can not only provide us with what we need, but can help us build our own internal capacity through the ongoing coaching and training that they're going to provide for us while assisting us with the direct care for our children. All ESS staff are trained in trauma-informed practices, the nurturing heart, and collaborative problem solving. That's all the Ross Green training, and will help train our schools with these models. And my goal is at the end of the 2 years, our staff will be better with this ongoing training and coaching. And so really through the Tier 2, what they call the Moderate Intensity Clinical Care Program, ESS will offer us the flexible therapeutic services that support the wellness and enrichment of our students who really have more mild to moderate mental health challenges, and as well as mental health challenges that are more episodic in nature. Through this program, ESS clinicians can deliver a combination of individual therapy and family therapy, typically more over a shorter period of time of like 6 to 8 weeks. It is available for longer if required. And this level of care is really suitable care for our students with more of the lower level substance abuse issues, as well as an alternative to suspensions. Because I want to point out, we do not want to exclude the students most in need of our love and care during this time through suspension, so they can provide us with some options. We need to teach these students and assist them during their crises. And again, although we have our own people, our psychologists, our social workers, our counselors, and really some unbelievable people, ESS can help amplify our capabilities and bridge the gap in services such as crisis assessments, response and reentry solutions, shorter duration clinical care, mental health on demand, and that's also wellness support for our students that need it. And again, as I said, alternatives to suspension and really look at more restorative practices. And now I'll turn it over to Liz to discuss more Tier 3 supports.
As John mentioned, our district currently supports students in the ESS Tier 3 model through our programs such as Strive and our Alternative Day program. As many of you know, about 2 years ago, we started our Strive program to support our students with severe emotional and behavioral support needs. The ESS Tier 3 program will enhance the services that our district is already able to provide, therefore enhancing our academic instruction, our social emotional instruction, as well as our counseling services that we provide our students. Through their embedded state-of-the-art clinical care support within our school buildings, we will directly improve the clinical, academic, and disciplinary outcomes for students with these severe and behavioral emotional challenges, and also provide the additional support that our staff will need in order to continue this work through the pandemic and beyond those 2 years in which we have funding. In addition, it will support the team struggling with students who presented with school avoidance and refusal, as we see that increase, especially in a time when our students are reacclimating and re-engaging in in-person learning environments through the pandemic and beyond. ESS is a support that will assist in providing quality care, improving outcomes for our students, and again, as we've mentioned before, provide high-quality, inclusive provisions for our students.
And if I can just add with that, with their Tier 3 supports, we have great school psychologists, school social workers, but I will point out there really is a difference between psychologists and social workers in school versus clinical psychologists and social workers. And when we were observing and I'll call it clinical rounds at a neighboring district, I mean, it brought me back to my days working in the hospital setting of grand rounds. Just the richness of that experience, and they are providing that for not only our clinicians but our administrators, our teachers, and really having that rich of a grand rounds, I think will just build our internal capacity to be at another level.
Thank you, Don and Liz. I'm going to actually introduce the board to Myrcella Bingham. Welcome, Myrcella. I think this is your first board meeting. Myrcella is a family liaison that supports our students that are enrolled in the CHOICE program, and also Patrick Cohn to talk about family engagement and the role of family liaisons. Myrcella?
Thank you for having me. So I'm going to start by saying that personalized family engagement, I believe, is important. I even consider it critical. And the reason I say that is because students spend roughly 85% of their time outside of the school. The family engagement specialist or the liaison can contribute to positive student outcomes. So what do I mean by that? Most of you have spoken into this already, where you could have improvement in attendance, improvement in grades, decreased disciplinary issues, and then improved parent-teacher-student relationships. I say patient because all day I talk about patients. I'm sorry. So improve parent-teacher-student relationships because they need to work together as a team. The family liaison, on the next slide, please, is the voice of parents at the table. The family liaison can communicate what parents can do to support their students learning at home and build relationships between families and school. The quote here says, one of the most important factors in a child's school success, even more so than economic or social status, is family engagement. How involved caregivers are with a child's education is a major factor in academic achievement. So the family liaison can help teachers to hear what parents and students are saying, I believe. This liaison can interact more with the parents, and what I'm finding out sometimes is that the parents will share more with the liaison than with the teacher or with the principal, and then the role can become where the liaison can advocate for the families and share with, depending on the situation, of course, with the principal, with the teacher, and then advocate for meetings and suggest strategies that can help to bridge the gap or solve the problem, and keeping in mind that the goal is really to get the student to be successful. The family liaison also can increase student success. Kim and I, and this is a popular saying, that teachers are the experts in the subject matter, parents are the experts in their own child, and because the child is spending so much time out of the classroom, if the parents understand the curriculum and work together with the teacher to implement the known expectations for the student, then I believe that the success or the outcome can be excellent.
Myrcella, thank you. Patrick, I think you have a few examples or an example from a parent perspective.
Certainly, and I think Myrcella really hit so many of those critical points. And one of the things that I can say about our staff, certainly in Wethersfield, is our teachers do a fantastic job reaching out to families, making those connections. The family liaison, and I have had experience working with family liaisons. They have different roles in different districts. They might, you might hear them referred to as family resource aides or family support service providers. They often act as Myrcella pointed out, the go-between between the school, the teacher, and those families. So often, we all know anybody, and I'm looking at, I can see Miss Granado is on my screen. I know Miss Paradise is in the room as well. As teachers, we all know, I want you to think about open house. All the families that show up are not always the ones that we really want to talk to or see. We love seeing all those people, but those are those parents that are engaged. They are oftentimes most engaged in their children's education for whatever reason or for whatever, because their circumstances allow. And so the family liaison allows us another conduit to some of those disengaged families or families that, we don't necessarily recognize their circumstances because we're not aware. We may not be aware for a variety of reasons, none of which may be our own doing. Oftentimes, we have to take into consideration, I know personally from an administrative perspective, there's a difference between a teacher calling and the principal calling. Even when I make a phone call in a friendly, supportive manner, the fact that it's the principal calling, there's a barrier that's automatically, the bristles sometimes go up or walls may go up that may not have existed. Even in a supportive conversation. I literally made a positive phone call the other day to a parent. I happened to see the child in the hallway. It was the third day in a row that they had earned a sticker in reading, and they were so proud to show it to me. I went back to my office and called the parent to say, hey, it's so awesome to see the smile and how engaged your child is. But the initial reaction when I first said, hi, this is Mr. Cohen, the principal at Hanmer, what happened? So it's, the family liaison can really help to break down some of those barriers. Also, the flexibility of the family liaison position as we envision it as a district will allow really kind of outside of normal school hours communications to occur. Oftentimes teachers are struggling to get in, they're coming in early, they're staying late, but the family liaison can really help make some connections when, teachers are teaching during the day. That family might be available, or that parent or grandparent might be available, where they're working second or third shift when the teacher might be able to call after school, the parent's not available. So it is another avenue, another conduit. Also, I think Myrcella hit this as well, but I'll also mention, I have seen these positions work so effectively where they allow another individual to help kind of bring some of those different cultural viewpoints that a parent might express or a family may express to a family liaison help engage the teacher in understanding what's going on for that family. Oftentimes, John pointed out a home visit he did the other day. So often our families are filled with pride, or there's a level of embarrassment they might feel for losing a home, losing their lease, losing the rent that they have, and now they're being forced into a hotel where they're homeless, they're couch surfing. There are many things available, many resources available to our families in those circumstances. However, if we don't know that that's what's happening to them, we can't get them those resources. And I have seen it be very effective where a family liaison, a family resource person helps us to make those connections and break down the barrier where a family feels more comfortable talking to that individual. So again, I think this is the opportunity to have these positions work within Wethersfield. It will really help support our larger mission and those priorities, those district priorities that Mr. Emmett pointed out at the beginning of the presentation.
Patrick, Myrcella, thank you so much. So just kind of a recap, we've talked a little bit about social emotional learning support, including mental health support that really addresses the well-being of the whole student. We've talked about family and community engagement through family liaison positions, and we're going to transition over into academic supports to talk about elementary math interventionists. So I'm going to turn over to Anne Malloy, curriculum specialist, and Patrick.
So just to kind of to touch base on the mathematical piece here, having the introduction of a math interventionist at the elementary level will be critical. Basically, you know, the data we see does show that our students have struggled with math. The data comes from our START assessments. Teachers are seeing this anecdotally. We are seeing an increase in our referrals to math SRBI. And our math department has been struggling to keep up. Our teachers are struggling as well to help enhance and help work with those students who are struggling. You know, there's really been an increase in, as I mentioned, in students flagging. We've had an increase in the number of parents that are reaching out to teachers and administrators expressing concerns over their child's struggles with math. And this has really placed an increased demand on our math tutors and our specialists as a result of that. So having this individual, you know, again, the interventionist role would really help support not only our students, but it would also help support our staff in engaging those students and helping support where they're struggling.
Yes, and to add on to what Patrick just said, you know, I was pouring through some of the data, and we have noticed that our sixth graders in particular are really struggling, and 29% of our sixth graders have flagged on the district STAR assessments this past winter. So we really, you know, we've kind of been digging in and trying to figure out why and what we can do to help support that. So one of the things that we talked about, and I talked to Patrick about, is that the fact that math is so concrete, sequential, and that if we have holes in the foundation, then we start to see those holes break down by the time they get to be fifth and sixth graders. For example, our third graders last spring were trying to learn fractions for the first time and didn't have any manipulatives at all. So some of these things we really have to account for, and having a math interventionist will really be extremely helpful, and it's so needed. Some of the things that math interventionist will be focused on will be assessing students to determine areas of need and monitor growth. And we've already been doing a lot of that in classrooms this year because teachers need to know more about students. So we've been using readiness screeners and diagnostics to help figure out where some of the gaps might be. But I also picture this interventionist being able to utilize win time to support struggling learners through small group instruction, collaboratively planning and co-teaching with classroom teachers to help support Tier 1 math instruction through coaching, and managing all aspects of SRBI in mathematics, including collaborating with teachers and math tutors, creating SRBI action plans, working with students, progress monitoring, scheduling and attending SRBI meetings. This position will really mirror like what the reading consultant does, only for math. So that was a great analogy to help me understand the roles of this position. So I really feel that this is so needed at this time for our kids.
Thank you, Ann and Patrick. I think, you highlight the reality of that we do have interrupted learning, not only in Wethersfield, across the state, across our nation, related to, distance learning and then hybrid and the different challenges and struggles our families face and continue to have remote learners in place. So I'm going to turn it over to Siobhan O'Connor and Rosalind Bannon to talk about math interventionists at the secondary level.
Good evening, everyone. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this evening. We expect the addition of interventionists for math at the secondary level to have a tremendous impact on our students and our teachers' success. And we're really pleased that we have the opportunity to directly align a support with the district priority number 2 of achievement. Though the timing is unfortunate that it coincides with the shared trauma of the pandemic, we're very grateful for the opportunity to gain extra support for our teachers and our students. We have found even before the pandemic that our students were struggling in the area of mathematics. And as a result of the pandemic, there are even more significant learning gaps that we need to deal with and address. We are confident that with the addition of these interventionists, we can provide the support students and staff need to help address these gaps. What we hope to do is to strengthen Tier 1 math instruction by providing coaching for the teachers on site in the classrooms with our students so that they can have an expert in the field, so to speak, helping them in their classrooms to strengthen their instruction and help meet their needs. The interventionists will ground their work with the teachers and the students by analyzing data with the teachers collaboratively and determine appropriate strategies and interventions to apply. They will also collaboratively plan lessons with the teachers to assure that the needs of every student are being met. We have found that collaborative planning is a very effective strategy to help meet the needs of all students and to talk about strategies that they may not have previously known about. Another focus for our interventionists at the secondary level will be to create and manage an SRBI system in math, which we have not had. We've been fortunate enough to have math tutors, but we haven't been able to have an SRBI program that has been fully coordinated the way that we do with our reading consultants in the area of literacy. So we truly are thankful for the opportunity of the ESSER funds to help fund this position and move math forward at the secondary level.
Great. Thank you, Rosalind. So one of the things that we're really looking for, and we know this is a K-12 problem that we're facing, especially due to the pandemic. We see that, just like Mrs. Molloy talked about, is that math does build on each other. So all of those skills, if there are gaps, it creates a really significant problem for students. And we want to make sure that this intervention position can really be impactful for our students and really move them to the next level in their mathematics learning. So we are looking for this position to help teachers really become experts at their craft. But it's also one of these pieces that in implementing the SRBI process, we are looking to also decrease the number of referrals to special education. And so we know that when students have these gaps, that can be one of those things that does occur. And so we really want the best for our students. And we know that if we can provide them with targeted instruction at each level, K through 12, this is the best chance for their ultimate success and being able to enter those higher level math classes that they would like to make sure that they are college and career ready.
Great, thank you, Siobhan and Rosalind. We are going to turn to a second strategy related to academic support and accelerating learning and looking at that interrupted learning model, which is an important one related to summer programming. So I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie McKenna and Jennifer Hammer, the class summer school coordinators, and I'm going to turn it over to them.
Good evening, everybody. I'm excited to be here and talk to you about Class 2.0. We are looking forward to capitalizing on the success of last year's class program. Well, we ran the program last year to really hopefully keep kids engaged over the summer, because we were just moving through those 3 months of DLP. This summer, we're really looking to use class to kind of capitalize on some of that unfinished learning. And what the research says, and we know as teachers and parents, there's always that concern around the summer slide, or those 8 weeks where kids are not engaged in learning. And this summer, coming out of the 1.5-year pandemic, the research is really supporting that it's not necessarily the summer slide, but really the unfinished learning that's happened because of interrupted schooling for kids across the country. So while we want to provide a program that's academic in nature, research is supporting the idea that they want to couple academic support with opportunities to engage creatively in order to improve students' readiness for school in the fall. So our thought for the class program is really to look at it as if it's school without feeling like school. So I'm the coordinator for the K-8 program. And last year, our class program consisted primarily of theme-based academic skill boosters organized by grade level. This year, we're going to continue to include those based on the positive parent feedback and even the positive teacher feedback, but we're adding some integrated offerings. At this point, our course catalog includes 37 different mini courses that are running in up to 64 sessions. So many of the courses are running a couple times over the course of our 8-week program. We're also offering a readiness program and partnering with Kim Bobbin to make that a part of our class program, as well as offering a transition to middle school program, which is brand new this year. Some of the things that we're offering in terms of integrated offerings, which are academics coupled with some of those creative outlets that some kids who don't shine academically definitely shine in this area, include we have a course in American Sign Language as well as other foreign languages. We have a social learning through movement, which is a PE course that's going to help teach kids some collaboration and social skills. We're offering a theater course, a band course. We have a couple book clubs running, a Nutmeg book club, a couple social justice book clubs. We're running an introduction to podcasting, and those are just to name a few. If all of our courses and all of our sessions run this summer in the K-8 program, we will potentially reach over 1,200 students. Last year, we enrolled 380 K-6. So this year we have the potential of expanding to 1,200 students K-8, and we're really excited about that. We are looking to provide priority registration to some identified students that our engagement teams and leadership teams are looking at each school. Our goal is to have priority registration out to those families on Monday, May 3rd, with open registration opening the following Monday on Monday, May 10th. We know that many parents have reached out to teachers and said, hey, that program that ran last summer, is that coming back? So we know that there are parents and teachers who are looking forward to the return of our class offerings.
So when Jen did class last year for K through 6, this will be the second year with that. At the high school, this is our first year running class, so we're very excited to do that. We have a couple different ideas going here. So we're starting off with some credit recovery. Right now we have one in-person English credit recovery class, which will be running during the month of July, but we'll have several online Edgenuity classes. We'll offer credit recovery for math, social studies, English, science, world language, and PE help. We're also going to offer a non-credit Edgenuity class for SAT prep, and we're working to get some teacher support if students need help with some of these Edgenuity classes. And like Jen was mentioning, for incoming kindergartners, incoming 7th graders, we're going to do the same thing for WHS. For those new to WHS, we're having a transition to WHS class. So that would be offered to current 8th graders, moving up to 9th grade. We're also going to offer it to our current 9th graders who are full remote, who have not stepped in the building yet, and also to those new to WHS. This week, actually, we had some students register at WHS for next school year who are upperclassmen. So any of those students new to WHS, they can take that transition to WHS class, which is just 4 hours over 1 week. to learn about the school and their schedules. And then the next slide, what will summer programming provide students? Lots. It'll provide lots of them. Interacting with peers, building skill sets, preventing learning loss. That's something we're really concerned about. Pursuing interests, like Jen was mentioning, all those different classes. And for WHS credit recovery, transitioning students to new schools, kindergartners, 7th grade, and up to the high school. And something we've been focusing on throughout this whole presentation, participating in social, emotional, and academic learning activities. So we're very excited about this. WHS is going to be opening up their registration maybe the end of this week, the beginning of next week, but it's coming real soon. So stay tuned for more info on that. Thank you.
Stephanie and Jennifer, thank you so much. We're going to transition to a different priority at the state level, and that is investment into technology to ensure that we have the proper tools for 21st century learning within our classrooms. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Harris and Jeff Tilke.
Thanks, Sally. Just wanted to start by saying, for those of you who don't know, a smartboard is just that. It's a touch-controlled device that, when connected to a projector and a computer, creates an interactive whiteboard in the classroom. This interactivity brings a number of new teaching and learning opportunities to the front of the class. One of the priorities of the technology department has been and continues to be to work alongside our staff and students to provide practical and useful tools to aid instruction. We began introducing smartboards to WPS classrooms in 2003 and found that these tools have revolutionized how teachers and students can teach and learn. About 7 or 8 years later, after purchasing our first fleet of smartboards, we found that they had begun reaching the end of their usable lives and opted to upgrade them to newer models with a renewed lifespan. This last large purchase was roughly 10 years ago now. While we've been able to maintain our sizable smartboard and projector fleet across our elementary and middle schools, many of them continue to approach the end of their useful lives. With this brief introduction and history of our smartboard fleet, I'd like to turn it over to Sarah Harris, who can further provide and speak on the many benefits of these useful tools and how they continue to be valuable assets to our instruction.
Thank you, Jeff. So yes, our smartboards have become just part of the foundation of our classrooms at the elementary and middle school level. When I started thinking about the benefits of smartboard, it was hard to identify just a few, but I think they really fit in 3 significant categories. The first being flexibility. Smartboards allow our teachers to access and control a broad array of digital learning tools, which, as we know, particularly after this school year, we have a broad array of digital learning tools for our students and for our staff, without being tied to a desktop computer. We know that instruction doesn't typically happen in front of a computer. Our teachers, particularly our teachers of our youngest learners, are moving about the classroom, and having access to that smartboard as a touch screen device not only allows accessibility for the students, but also allows that flexibility so that our teachers can both support the students and have access to those instructional tools. Smartboards also support collaboration and consistency. So we found, particularly this year, as our teachers were planning lessons and creating materials designed to work with smartboards, those materials were being created collaboratively across classrooms and in some cases across schools. We know that sharing of instructional resources facilitates greater consistency, and particularly in a district where we have 5 wonderful and diverse elementary schools, there is significant benefit to our students and to our teachers in having those opportunities for collaboration and sharing of resources. And last but not least, adaptability. So if the last year has taught us nothing else, we know that adaptability in classrooms is tremendously important. Over the last year, we have been able to transition our classrooms into hybrid learning models, and teachers were able to provide instruction simultaneously to students physically in the classroom, along with those students learning at home. The smartboards at the elementary level in particular were critical to making sure that our teachers could provide for the needs of the youngest learners in the classrooms, while also being able to ensure that, again, accessibility, that word of the day, being able to ensure that we were able to provide accessible learning opportunities to those students at home as well.
Thank you, Jeff and Sarah. So our final topic, our part of presentation today and allocation of the ESSER funds is related to professional development, and we're doing a full circle back to social emotional learning and the whole child with a focus on professional development related to restorative practices. So I'm going to turn it over to Patrick and John, I believe.
So Sally, I just have to say, you took my intro. I wanted to go back full circle as we look into restorative circles and remind us what Superintendent Emmett shared at the beginning of this meeting. Our priorities look at equity, empathy, and achievement. And specifically, the priority of continued focus on building a positive, empathetic, and safe community and increasing effective communication through restorative practices will serve as the backbone of all of this work. Restorative practices promotes inclusive practices, relationship building, and problem solving through their methods of conflict resolution. In turn, building a more positive school and community culture and equitable outcomes for all, really encompassing what he shared with us at the beginning of this meeting. Patrick?
Thanks, Liz. You know, to Liz's point, and one of the things that's exciting about this work is I've now had the opportunity to sit in 2 years worth of budget workshops, and those are riveting meetings, as we all know. But one of the things that I consistently hear and we hear as administrators and working with our teachers is they want and what they need is more strategies, more tools to support their learners and the students in their room. And when I came into Wethersfield, I had some experience with restorative approaches and practices and learned quite a bit about it in my former district. And I recognized a lot of the seeds were already growing here in Wethersfield. Our staff is hungry for this. And what restorative is going to allow us to do, it's going to encompass and act as really an umbrella over so many of every single one of those priorities and support our work towards those district goals and strategic goals. Including, as Liz pointed out, equity, empathy, and our student achievement. And I think this quote really says this says this best when we ask, what will the outcomes be? Really, what we want is engagement. We want our children and our youth, or those that we supervise, to see the reason behind behaving a certain way and developing a sense of discipline around it, which I think, one of the key components to restorative approaches and practices is understanding what we mean when we use certain vocabulary. We really need to say what we mean. And so oftentimes when we talk about student behaviors and challenges that we face with students, we want to be careful. Oftentimes we talk about consequences, and what we really mean is punishment. And we want to be very careful in that vocabulary. So our work is going to be long-term with this. And it's going to really force us to look at words like discipline and say for what we mean. And what we really want our kids to do and our teachers to do and all of us to do is develop a sense of discipline around what the appropriate behaviors and the goals that we want our students to achieve. So restorative approaches and practices are going to support those efforts to engage our entire school community. Every single one of our students, families, the Board of Education will be a part of this process as well. This is a cultural shift to a restorative model that will ensure equity for all of our members of our community, so voices will be heard. It's going to engage, it's going to give us a venue for those difficult conversations that we need to have, and challenging and courageous conversations. The professional development and implementation of restorative practices is going to provide all of our teachers, staff, students, and parents with the tools, strategies, and resources to support all of our students. And I know John says this, but every student, every day, this is what it's going to come to. And this is really going to provide our teaching staff, our paraprofessionals, our nurses, our office staff, our tutors, everyone is going to be a part of this process, and it's going to really help our students to grow and achieve success academically and socially. To really put this into perspective, I think this slide really says it all. It's a tale of two schools, and on the left-hand side, you see a zero tolerance system, which I think we've all worked in, whether it's just kind of I'm failing to think of the words right now, but it's that more traditional, we don't tolerate, being late. There's consequences or punishments for everything. So Carlos had a heated argument with his parents before school. He's running late. let's take a look at how this plays out in two different, in a restorative zone and also a zero tolerance system. In the zero tolerance system, he's met at school. While in Wethersfield, we don't necessarily have metal detectors and police searches, we certainly have to buzz in, and you have to come in if you're late, even at Hanmer. You come in after 8:55, you've got to buzz in, go through the secretaries, sign in, and whatnot. His teacher, when he gets to class, he's late to first period, and his teacher scolds him. He talks back. He's given a detention. At lunchtime, he's already having a bad day. He has words with another classmate. They get into a minor altercation, and the SRO who's there ends up arresting both of them for fighting. By the end of the day, he's in a juvenile detention center all afternoon. He's missed all his academic classes, and he's now got a record, and he's facing suspension from school, which is now going to put him out for even longer. In a restorative practice-based education system, when Carlos gets to school, whether he's late or not, he's welcomed to school by his teachers, by his administrators, and his fellow students as he enters. He's late to class, but his teacher waits until after class to speak to him, finds out what's going on, talks to Carlos, asks him what's happening in his day, what caused him to be late, and actually helps him set up a meeting with his school counselor to help work through that. He still has that fight at lunch, but instead, and this would be more of a high school example, he has student peer mediators. He's got support staff that intervenes. The students sit down together, they de-escalate the situation, they may have a restorative circle, and they're ready to re-enter their academics so they don't miss their classes for the afternoon. Carlos and the other student agree to help clean up the cafeteria during a free period. Carlos meets with his counselor and his parents after school, and they resolve the conflict at home. So one of the things you see in that restorative system is everybody is involved. Teachers are involved, administrators involved, office staff is involved, there's support staff that's involved, and even his parents become involved in that scenario in a supportive way. So you can see kind of the push forward, and I hope you can see in this example, these examples, why we want to move forward, because we feel that this definitely provides an opportunity to support every one of our students, and it also is going to provide our staff so many more strategies to support their students and help lead to less burnout for our staff as well.
Patrick, can I just point out, because you started with Ross Green, but with Ross Green, one of his sayings is kids do as well as they can. And so with it, we have to look at the skills that are, lagging and help teach them. He's also says, teachers, staff, administrators, we do as well as we can. And so the same thing, how do we teach a new philosophy where we're not excluding students? And believe me, when students get suspended, they are being excluded, not included. Through restorative practices, there are children, even when they have bad days.
Thank you, John. I think that's a critical point. And only one last thing I'd want to mention about this. I think this is a very critical piece for the board to hear as well is, so often in education, we find ourselves buried in initiatives, and our teachers talk about this all the time as well. While this is a new process and a new shift for Wethersfield Public Schools, this isn't a curriculum. This isn't a new program. This isn't something that we expect implemented September 2nd. This is a long-term culture shift that we look forward to working with our staff, with our community to implement successfully for long-term success.
Liz, Patrick, and John, thank you for that. And I am going to turn over to Matt and Michael in a minute, but hopefully as you look back through this presentation, you see how our district priorities have weaved through, and also the state priorities have weaved through the recommendations and the allocation of the ESSER funds. So I'm going to turn it over to Michael and Matt.
Thank you, Sally. In the next two slides, we have a breakdown of the proposed Wethersfield Public Schools ESSER 2 allocation. Our total allocation coming from the federal government through the State Department of Education is $1,214,993. And this is how we propose to allocate this money over the course of the next couple of years. Looking for $489,966 for 7 math interventionists to serve students at each school and improve the SRBI process. We're looking to allocate $80,000 to design, implement, and coordinate a summer program for incoming K-12 that includes credit recovery, transition to K, grade 7 in high school. You heard both Jen and Stephanie talk about that this evening. $60,000 for 2 family liaisons to engage our families and students. You heard from Myrcella and Patrick with regard to that. $15,000 allocated for teacher professional development related to SEL curriculum, mental health, and restorative practices. We're looking for an investment of $379,000 over the next 2 years for effective school solutions to come in and provide mental health supports for students and coaching staff regarding mental health support and behavior support. We're looking for an allocation of $100,000 to purchase Rethink Ed curriculum software for Tier 1 lessons related to SEL. We're looking for $20,000 for additional PPE and supplies related to mental well-being and physical safety. And finally, we're looking for an allocation of $71,027 to allocate for district-wide smart board replacements. Matt, anything to add, sir?
No, I do just want to clarify that ESSER 2 is projected to be expended over next fiscal year, 21-22, and then the American Recovery Plan, which may be referred to as ESSER 3, would be for the 22-23 fiscal year and 23-24 fiscal year.
All right. That concludes our presentation this evening. I'd like to open it up to any questions that board members may have.
Thank you, Mr. Emmett and team. Elaine.
Aha, unmuted. Michael, I just want to be clear about something here. These family liaisons, you wanted 2, Michael.
Yes.
And is there a function similar to a social worker, or as Patrick said, outside the school day? I'm trying to grasp the difference between social worker and family liaison. If Patrick can help me on that.
Go ahead. Patrick, Myrcella?
Yeah, I would be happy to step in. So, Ms. Paradise, one of the, like I said, one of the things that a family liaison will do is they may work, their hours are going to be a little bit more flexible potentially, so they may be able to work outside of, that typical contractual day that a teacher or a social worker has. It also, again, so often, it's been my experience that oftentimes we find, I mentioned, titles before, and oftentimes we find that families, despite our best efforts to create relationships with families, either they still view us in some manners, in some situations, as a government agency, which technically we are, but they see us that way, and you also have circumstances where the social worker, when they call, the family automatically thinks a mental health situation, versus a family liaison goes in a completely different road. This could be, as I mentioned before, they may be looking at McKinney-Vento, which is the homeless situation. So a family might be able to express that to those families. This could be someone that helps them find community partners, helps them reach out to even something, while we hit 211 may get them mental health resources, the family liaison is going to be able to hook them up with so many other community partners, whether it's before and after care. It's going to be a variety of different things that the social worker may be able to help with, but it's going to also free that social worker up to work on some of those more mental health situations.
Yeah, and if I could just add, Patrick, in the sense of the family liaisons typically do not have the same clinical experience as our psychologists and social workers, but they have more of, they're going to collaborate with all our members of the team to really connect with families to figure out what they need. And I'll go more into a strength-based focus of what are the strengths of these families and how do we connect them with the rest of the team to help the child. So not the same clinical experience, but of course working with the full team to help engage some families that may not be as engaged at the present time, or who, situation makes it difficult for them to engage.
And
will these family interventionists run K-12? We only have 2 we're asking for. So they be assigned K to 12 people?
One would be allocated to elementary and one would be secondary. But again, they would work together as a unit. And the other piece, Elaine, is that the family liaisons often look at the family structure, not the individual student structure. So many times our social workers, our education, our teachers are looking at from a student lens. But this family may have 3 students. They may have a preschooler that hasn't yet entered kindergarten. And we found that working with the family and some of the work we've done through WECC with multi-generational work is that by looking through the family unit structure, we can support a family that might have 3 students, 2 students, 4 students, and have an impact on and help coordinate that across schools also, which I think is a very different lens than we've traditionally used through our social worker and our school-based focus.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question here? You must have a minimum standard of qualifications to hire one of these people, correct?
Yes, so these family liaisons would receive training. They may have varied backgrounds. They would have to have a bachelor's degree, but they wouldn't be a licensed, they may be, but not required to be a licensed social worker. It is a part-time position.
But when you say bachelor's, if they have a bachelor's in economics, that's fine, as opposed to a bachelor's in family relations or psychology or something more pertinent to the issue at hand.
Yeah, and we really would look for experience within that. So they come with varied experience and backgrounds. I think we also want to make sure that we have somebody that can help outreach to our students and our families that have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic. And so we want to make sure it's somebody that has a broad sense of culture and community and also familiar with resources within our community and surrounding communities. So I think the background, the type of people that would apply, Chris, are varied, but because it's a part-time position, we've had some strong applicant pools. So Kim Bobbin has, in the past, had been into a similar position, and myrcella is in a similar position as supporting our students. They're part of the choice program. So we've had some really great success in hiring some amazing people that are making a marked difference for our students.
Well, here's my concern, though. You have 2 people basically covering the entire student body, doing what I would consider to be an amazing amount of detail work. You just don't show up at someone's house to intervene and get that all done within an hour, put a report together, get back to all your coworkers, work on a strategy. For a part-time job, if that person has a caseload of 5, 10, 20 people, I think I'm trying to figure out exactly what the value there is in terms of services. Second, at what point, if this person I assume is a contractor of our board, at what level of responsibility does this person have if they are supposedly advocating other services for this family or working on strategies that may conflict with the strategies that you have for that parent? I'm just concerned about this sort of position. While I understand what you're trying to do and I find it laudable, will 2 people actually have any sort of impact? I mean, I would imagine we have more than 20 or 30 or 40 children out there that would easily fit this category of additional needs, whether it's COVID related or it's ongoing and systematic related to economic hardship or the like.
Patrick, do you want to start with that one?
So I would point out that they wouldn't necessarily, again, where a social worker or a school psychologist carries a caseload where they are consistently working directly with that family. Not that this person would kind of be a one and done, but oftentimes they end up being the conduit or the connector. So they may not actually work for hours and hours and hours on end and weeks on end and months on end. It may be they may just be the go-between. They may be where the family calls that individual, asks a question, and that person's able to, within minutes, connect them to the appropriate either community partner or person within the school, be it the school nurse, the secretary, the administrator, the teacher. The more in-depth jobs that I think you're referring to, there will be times, yes, they might become more engaged in a situation where they find themselves, spending more time. But it's not necessarily true that every single case that they come across, that they're engaged for, months on end, if you will.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one final ask. Who decides how these people are utilized? In other words, does it have to be signed off by the superintendent, a principal at a high school? How do you keep, in other words, where does this person get their orders from, and how do they juggle their priorities within the school district based on the case file or the need? So in other words, you call up and say, I need you to go out and talk with this parent. I need, okay, fine. Then Siobhan calls and said, hey, I've got someone at the high school. And then this person sort of saying, well, which one do I, how, is it like first come, first? I'm just trying to figure out how the
So
management
I would
works.
think that, it would be really important, and Siobhan, if you want to take it.
I didn't mean to single you two out. I just.
No, go for it.
That's okay.
Good questions. Good questions,
So
Chris.
they're definitely great questions, and I would say obviously if funds were unlimited, we would love to have one in every school. And I think unfortunately budget doesn't require us to make some tough choices. So Patrick and I both have worked with family liaisons in our former districts, and I did actually have a shared liaison for a period of time. Really, how that works is that we have to work together, and so we have to prioritize what are the families who need the most help, and who do we need that additional layer of support for, and who can our staff currently in our schools take on. And so I think that's a really important function of the school administrator and the school administrative team to really be able to identify those high needs families that are in need of supports that might extend outside of the school day. And so really does need that different lens to look at that particular family, to know that we're not making inroads. And so generally how we do it, Mr. Healy, is we try first at our school level, and then when we're not meeting with the success that we want to for that particular family, we then reach out to people who have maybe a different viewpoint or different connections within the community to help us out. And so it is a little difficult, but I think, as an administrative team, we work really, really well together. And I feel like we can make it work. And obviously, if we want to find, $300,000 more, we'll take one at every school. But, in the interim, I feel like we can be successful in bits and pieces right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Healy, just you asked a lot of questions. So I've had a long history of working with liaisons, especially in my clinical work. And with this, I guess first thing I'll say is with the experience, of course, it's great to get somebody with a background, but more we're looking for that people person. And I know Sally brought up Kim and Myrcella. They're people, they're person people. They know how to communicate with people. And then really it is that collaboration. They're one member of a large team. And so we have to work together, but they just add a little bit of a difference to what we typically have in the bill.
Right.
Ms. Evans.
All right, thank you for that. I have one question regarding the math interventionists, which I'm really excited because I have a fourth grader who cries a lot about math right now. And I can see the stress. It's tough learning that stuff at home. Are these positions, so I'm assuming there's one for each school or something like that to go and help reach out and close any gaps. Is this a 1-year position? Is this a position over 2 years? What is the thought process going forward with this? Because there's a definite need. I definitely see that, but I'm just wondering.
Mr. Emmett, do you want me to talk about that one?
Yeah, go ahead, Sally.
Yeah, so tonight's presentation is on ESSER 2, which is really for the 21-22 fiscal year. What was presented today really covers 1 year. It is our vision and our intent that the American Recovery Act, or ESSER 3, will continue the majority of these supports for 2 additional years. So as Matt Kazaka mentioned, the fiscal years are a little bit different. So we're not looking for this to be a 1-year support, but a continued 3-year support would be our hope. With that said, Mr. Emmett, has shared that we don't have the final allocation, we don't have the grant, right? So we are really looking at tonight's presentation is on next year's fiscal year, but our intent in building and aligning our priorities with the state priorities, that these gaps, these needs do not go away at the end of 1 year, and to bring that consistency over time. Rethink Ed is a 1-year cost, but we also, effective school solutions, mental health support, social emotional learning is our #1 priority for the 2nd year in a row. That number will not dwindle. That is not, in my opinion, going anywhere, and we'll probably need some continued support next year. So we imagine our supports and our priorities remaining similar and continuing this work over at least 3 years.
Thanks, Sally. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. These poor kids have had to deal with so much, so I'm just thinking about that. And I love the focus on the SEL. I think it's been really helpful for my kid. It's hard to even find a therapist right now for kids because so many kids are having anxiety and they're struggling with a lot of things. So I think the presentation was fantastic, and I appreciate all the work that you guys put into this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other board members with questions, comments?
And one
Mr.
more.
Granado.
Go ahead. Oh, go ahead. I'll go last.
Yep, Ms. Granado.
Well, I just have one question. The ESSER funds are available. Did you, you created these programs that we need for our schools. I feel like you've wrapped your arms around the school system with this. Did someone have to say okay to all this, or are we just allowed to go forward with our ESSER plans here?
Yeah, we've submitted a needs assessment and the grant application, so we're just awaiting approval from the state at this point in time. And I would also caution again with regard to the current budget situation. Tomorrow evening we'll meet with council for a budget workshop. Again, you know where we are with our current operating budget. We're projected for a 2.7% increase. You'll hear later on this evening our current fiscal condition in this year. We are under budget. I am hopeful that we are able to receive the funding that we've requested so that we don't have to supplant our budget with any of these ESSER funds. Should that happen, when we get to that point, if the council reduces funding, we're going to have to prioritize our efforts within the ESSER grant and look to find savings there. So I'm hopeful we keep it as it is. I think this was well thought out. You see this evening that this was a team approach. And Bobby, I appreciate your comment about, wrapping our arms around the school district. This, you can see a very clear alignment from the strategic plan right down to what's going on in our classroom. So I appreciate that comment.
Any other board members?
One quick one.
Yes, Mr. Healy.
So I too think you've done a very good job, a thoughtful presentation. I know there's no way to change it, but I just want to make a quick comment about how words are very important, as we all know, especially in our business. The words we use, and we use one of our new words of choice these days is equity. We use it everywhere. We see it everywhere in our world, and indeed we have it here in our educational documents, and I think that's good. And I think if we look at the oath we took, it's to protect the Constitution and to apply the equal protections of the law for our children to have an equal access, equal opportunity in education, which means we provide everybody the best chance we can, and we go to other lengths than we have to make those efforts with people that have more, and we challenge the kids who are handling it and want more as well, and that's all part of this experience. I think we all agree. But I have a real problem when we start saying that our goal is to guarantee equitable outcomes for all. Because I don't think anyone can guarantee, nor should we guarantee outcomes for anyone, because we can't. Some people will graduate with A's, some will be B's, C's. When you start throwing around outcomes, you put yourself in a position where to say, well, I got a C+. That's not an equal outcome to my friend over here who got a B. And I think it's an innocent misuse of words. I think equal opportunity, equal access, and doing everything we can to put the tools we need in the hands of kids to do the things that we outlined in this application are great. But on the other side of it, to say equal outcomes for all puts us in a very dangerous place, because I don't believe that's a responsibility of anyone. It's up to these kids to soar as best we can when we give them the tools to do it. But for us to say we're going to guarantee everyone have an equal outcome, I don't think is really what we're about. At least that's not what I signed up for. I'm not interested in debating it necessarily. I just want to put it on the record. I realize the document is what it is, and I respect that. But it's just one thing that I feel very strongly about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haley. Mr. Riley, did you have a question, comment?
I just had one comment. I was wondering if the 100,000 for the curriculum, is that school-wide? I also had a question as to what a SRBI is. Maybe that was mentioned and I didn't catch it. And thank you for all the hard work that everyone did on this. It's greatly appreciated.
You can take those questions, Jim. Rethink Ed is a curriculum-based software that our committees, we had an elementary, middle school, and high school committee that worked independently, selected. We looked at a lot of different programs. They all selected it. And so Rethink Ed basically has, in really simple terms, a curriculum or lessons around a whole bunch of domains of topics related to social emotional learnings across all grade levels. So our teachers will have access to easy tools and lessons that are research-based to support students. So yes, it is. We have a 4-year license for every student in the district and every teacher in the district. And we're actually going to be starting some professional development next week on Rethink Ed for our K-8 staff. And SRBI is essentially what I would call the process for reading support or math support, scientific research-based interventions, which is a complicated term to say it's a process we use to identify students that need additional support in reading and maths. So if somebody's getting additional math support from a tutor or an interventionist at this point in math, they'd be part of that SRBI process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Lesser.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. Just a real quick comment. In what has probably been the most difficult educational year we've all seen, I got to hand it to all of you teachers and administrators. This is a tremendously well thought out plan that is going to be, I think, a huge benefit for our community and for all our students. So, I mean, it's amazing all the work you do that's already on your plate, and then adding all this on top of it this year. And it's so very much needed for our students. I just want to say a big giant thank you to all of our teachers and administrators that contributed to this. Great job.
Thank you.
Any other board members? All right, thank you to everyone. Great presentation. It's very well thought out, as other board members had said. I just think it's important to remember the social, emotional, and well-being of our students is going to be huge next year, even bigger than this year. So I think it's great that we're allocating so much resources to that, and it can't be lost, because I think we're going to need every dime of it to help our students transition back to the new norm. Thank you for all the teachers and staff who came tonight and principals. We deeply appreciate it. If you guys want to leave now, you can leave, because it is late. Thank you all for coming. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Moving on, announcements and information, please check your packet. Make sure if you can't make a committee meeting, you let the committee chair know. Meetings held, Facilities and Maintenance Committee, 4/6/21. Mr. Ocasio is not here. Mr. Emmett, would you like to give a brief synopsis?
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Mr. Carey. Yeah, the Facilities and Maintenance Committee met along with representatives from Colliers International and Malone McBroom. We went through and did kind of a history of where we were with regard to our work we did in Phase 1, as well as the work we did in Phase 2. We continued the discussion of the long-range building project, discussed the scenarios, and then we came up with a series of next steps. Those next steps included Collier's updating the cash flow and timeline data, Malone McBroom starting the process of looking at updating the enrollment study. We also discussed making the Facilities and Maintenance Committee meetings a standing meeting on a monthly basis so that we can dig into this work more deeply. So as I said earlier in communications, the Facilities and Maintenance Committee will be receiving the cash flow updates this week. Thank you, Mr. Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Emmett. Memorial Day Parade Committee 4/14/21, Mr. Castle's not here. Wethersfield Early Childhood Collaborative Meeting 4/19/21, and the CREC Council Meeting 4/21/21. Ms. Granado, you got them both.
Okay, so the WECC meeting, the Wethersfield Early Childhood Collaborative, met on Monday, April 19th. The mission of WECC is that all our Wethersfield children birth to 8 are healthy, developmentally successful learners, and connected to the community. The committee heard from many groups who work with our families on their plans for the summer. That sounds great. Summer reading at the library is pre-K through 5th grade and is virtual. This is always a themed program, and it will start on the last day of school and run until the last day of vacation. The big news is the availability of summer school from our ESSER funds. The Historical Society will be having Tuesday concerts at the Keeney Center. I think that's most exciting. And PEP program graduates are seeking ways to connect the community to activities and support. Please utilize the WECC website for any further information. Thank you. I was unable to go to my CREC meeting, which I do enjoy, because I was involved in interviewing for the Highcrest principalship, which I just have to make the comment that, first of all, the committee was incredibly knowledgeable, very honest in our discussion, and the candidates, it's as if we hit a jackpot. So I'm looking very much forward to Thursday and continued interviewing of our candidates. So I did miss CREC though.
All right, thank you, Ms. Granado. Student Programs and Services 4/21/21, Mr. Healy.
Chris, you're on mute.
So you don't hear my dog barking, I apologize. So we had three areas of interest that happened for those of you that weren't there. I'll be real brief. We talked about the mastery-based diploma assessment credit checklist, trying to be a little bit more flexible on this, given where we've been for the last year. We also talked about the 5-year English learning plan proposal that'll run through 2026, and also addressed the Strive program at Hamner, grades 4 through 6. We're going to expand the Strive program, which is very exciting. I can go into other details, or Sally can do others if you'd like. If not, I can send you the materials, but it was mostly an update of where we were with these programs. Did I get it all, Sally?
Yes, good job, Chris. Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you. Perfect. Good.
Finance and Operations Committee meeting 4/27/21, that would be tonight. Mr. Michaels.
Thank you. Just to report that we are currently about $706,000 under budget as we progress through April now. May and June left, so those numbers are definitely tightening up and seem pretty solid. We also there's the joint meeting tomorrow between the board and town council on budget issues. We also learned tonight that the free lunch program that everyone has been a part of this year will extend into next school year as well, so that's exciting. And we are still waiting final information and whatnot on all the state and federal funding guidelines and stuff that's coming out with those, so more to come on that.
Thank you, Mr. Michaels. Meeting scheduled, the Wethersfield Early Childhood Collaborative is on 5/10/21 at 4:30 p.m. There is no unfinished business. Is there any public comment, Mr. Emmett?
No, sir, I have no one in the queue.
Thank you. Public comment is now over. Board comment. Any board members wishing to make comment? Mr. Lesser, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. Real quickly, last night, the Career Advisory Board met, and there's a lot of great things happening. I'll just highlight a few. One is on May 19th, we will have a virtual career fair for our students. All high school students will be able to participate, and we have 130 videos, 130 career videos that people in the community and surrounding communities in different professions have made for our students to learn about different careers. Secondly, we just, I want to just add to that, we collaborated with Newington, we've also collaborated with Cheshire. It's a great program where we're working with other school districts as well for our career fair. Also, we had a lunch and learn with an animator who's animated some nationally known productions, and this was great. We had 23 students interested in animation, and lastly, on our next lunch and learn, which is coming up, I believe next week, is a physical therapist. So these are great opportunities for our kids to learn more about different careers, our high school students, and as we always say, to give them another vision of what their future could look like, to actually see folks that are in these careers and get a sense of what it'd be like to have that different profession. So we'll wrap up our year with a meeting at the end of May, but just wanted to give you an update on the Career Advisory Board. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you, Mr. Lesser. Any other board members wishing to make comment? Yes, Ms. Granado.
Okay, the HAT, the Hunger Action Team, is working to fight food insecurities in our town. And Family and Social Services Group at the Town Hall continues to thank the residents of Wethersfield who have so generously given to the town's food bank during this COVID crisis. It's almost as if they were trying to fill a town hall with foods and important things for families. Please call the town of Wethersfield for any info on the mobile food share locations and summer programs. And lastly, I'm just going to take this moment to say a fond farewell to a beloved children's author, Beverly Cleary. This is kind of odd, but for people out there who love to read to their children, Beverly Cleary passed away at the age of 104 after she wrote about Ramona Quigley. And if you ever want to see an atypical, maybe typical young girl growing up, and she was growing up in Portland at that time, she wrote Beverly Cleary wrote many books, and she was really one of my favorite authors for the children I taught. So farewell to Beverly Cleary. 104 is pretty good, though. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Granado. Any other board members? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night. Stay safe.
Everybody.
Have a good night, all.
Good night, everyone.